Hi, I'm Eli, creator of the Collection Manager and West Coast Forge Guardian for North America. I am also known as MooreThanMoost on the Discord, and you're listening to Soulbind, the SolForge Fusion podcast.
You're listening to Soulbind, a new podcast about the people who play the hybrid card game SolForge Fusion and their relationship with this game. I love this game, and I'm curious to find out what others love about it too. How were you first introduced? How's the game changed for you over time? And what are your hopes and dreams for the world of Solace? So Eli, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm really excited to meet you. I've used the Collection Manager all the time. We've chatted a little bit as well, so I can't wait to get into some of this conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you for having me on.
So I always like to start with a little bit of a background to you. So usually it's around a question like, what role does gaming in general play in your life?
It plays a big role. I love games. I remember the day that my best friend's cousin introduced me to my first deck building game, Dominion. And that's such a core memory to me. It was my best friend's cousin's boyfriend at the time, who I think is currently ex-husband. Mm-hmm. It's been a long time, but I love games so much. I've always liked math and analytics, and it was a way for me to engage with that part of my brain, but in a social setting. And it's like in my later days, it has kind of expanded out from board games and video games I started doing improv, and I love it so much. Like the verb that they use for the action of doing is they call it play. And so, yeah, I love playing games.
What about any other hobbies you have? Like I hear you're a cosplayer to a certain degree.
Yeah, I discovered that I was a closeted theater kid when I was in college, and I was really heavy into the math nerd and thought that was kind of the only nerd aspect to me. Ceramics was kind of what brought me into the realm of art. And then after college, not having access to a studio, I was trying to figure out some other form of expression. And that ultimately led me to taking an improv class and then dabbling in all sorts of arts and crafts. I built this pipe cleaner, tree that is a representation of Fraud's Experiment, the new set 3 card, all the different variants of it. I started doing cosplay. Every time I fly out to an event, I pick a new character.
That's awesome.
And it's not great cosplay, but it's an excuse for me to say, I've got a few days before I travel. Because I have the ideas for months in advance and don't execute them until right at the last minute. But I've learned to just embrace the jankiness of it, and it's a cool way to enjoy a game that I love and show my love for it.
Everybody that I've seen or heard or talked to who's sort of been around you when you're doing one of those cosplays, they get so excited, the vibe that you're putting out there and the energy you're putting into that community of, I love this thing so much, I'm willing to make this. Let's get into part 1. So this one's all about, how did you two meet? How were you two introduced? Very much like, telling a love story. What was the beginning there?
So I saw it when it was on Kickstarter. It's the SolForge Fusion Kickstarter. Not SolForge Kickstarter,
yeah.
And not the SolForge Fusion digital app Kickstarter, but the middle one there, back a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
I saw it with 3 days, I think, was left of it. I downloaded the mod on TTS. I played 2 games of it, and there was something that I didn't know why I loved it so much. And as I played with it, I dove into it. I had heard the name Richard Garfield before. And so when I saw this, I was like, oh, I can trust that. Here, I'll back it. And that next week I played. I dove into it. I'm like, why do I love this so much? And the co-designer, so there was Justin Gary, who's CEO of Stoneblade, and Richard Garfield co-created this game together. Richard Garfield is a professor in combinatorics, which is the study of counting, which was my specialty when I was in college. And so there were just things about the design in this game that just pulled me in so much. It was so simple and basic structure that provided so much with there's so much you can do just with vanilla stats alone, putting the value across 3 different levels. There's so much extra play in a basic system. Then you add in the forged card mechanic where there's stats on a base body and then stats on a modifier. I just saw so many systems that just like it had seeped its fangs into me, and I was all in from the start.
There's something very beautiful mathematically about this game. And I'm not somebody who sort of seeks that out of my games. Typically, the games that I've played, it's usually been there's an IP out there, whether it's Star Wars or Marvel or something like that. And then I kind of come to love the game that sits around it, but it was the IP that brought me in first. And I guess I'm feeling like a similar experience to you. I don't have the mathematics background that you and Richard Garfield share, but there is something about the engine here, the mathematical engine, which is just so appealing, addictive to try and get your head around and figure out how it works, because you're playing 2 games at the same time, and to not have that be like overloading your brain, either cognitive overload to do a game about deck building and then a game about battling and creature combat, and overlay that in a 4D chess kind of way, but not have it blow your brain trying to juggle that. There's just something really beautiful about that design. I totally agree. Sounds like it was just hooked from the beginning, love at first sight.
Yeah, it was quick and it was swift and it was strong.
And I think when you're learning a new game, there can be a moment of like, or several moments, probably hundreds of moments along the way where you click, you're like, I understand this on another level now, or I get this in a way that I didn't get it before. And I wonder if there's like a big moment that you remember, because you talked about like the 2 first games at TTS, but was there a moment anywhere along the way in your journey? It could be like last week, I just had this revelation about the game and how it works, but I'm interested in a moment when there was just, oh, I get it now.
There are certainly moments that feel like a discovery, but exactly like, oh, I get the game now. It's never kind of manifested in exactly that manner. I think there's been this kind of evolution as the way that I look at a game, and as I sink my teeth into it, I go to the edges. Where are the breakpoints? What are the mechanics? How do things interact? I am very much like a combo style player in most games, which is very difficult in a game like SolForge Fusion where you have limited deck construction.
It almost feels like they've said, no combos for you, my young friend.
At first glance, I would agree with you. But as I played more, it was like, oh, between the decks, you discover the combos that they enable, that the pieces that you find. And it's this, every fuse is a new opportunity to explore something else. We'll get more into the collection manager later, but I spent hours looking through all the cards trying to parse what all the different effects would do. And this was, the Kickstarter had ended, not yet fulfilled. And then Gen Con, the very first series of tournaments, was, I think, maybe a couple months away. No, it must have been weeks away, because this happened weeks away.
And it sounds like you always do your best work like on the verge of something. You need to leave it to pretty close for things to happen.
Honestly, I don't know if things get done if it isn't that. It's like, I don't know if any viewers have ADHD, but they might know what that feels like. I saw an interaction between 2 cards. There's a card called Grove Mother that in its level 3 says, when you replace this, reanimate it. And an important other aspect of the card is it's a mage. And then I saw the card Master. It's a forge card, so it'll have some modifier with it too. And that says, when you play a mage, you may play a spell sprite minion. And I didn't have a Master card, so I knew it wasn't in my collection. I hadn't seen it. I only knew about it because I had been diving hours and hours into the sheets of getting all the database of all the game and parsing what the abilities can do. I made this connection of, if you have both of those on the field, you play the Grove Mother, you can just use the elemental to replace it to then bring the Grove Mother back. And in my, 16 decks that I had from the Kickstarter, I had one that has a Grove Mother and a Spring Dryad in it. And I was on the phone with Ben, Onk Gaming. He's another wonderful community member of this game. I was messaging him and we were playing, and I was like, hey, do you happen to have a Tempest deck with this card in it? And he said, yes. And I was like, Gen Con's 2 weeks away. Can you happen to ship it to me and I'll trade you something later? And we can figure that out. And he's like, I have like shipping containers pre-postage within arm's reach. So I can send it to you tomorrow. So he sent it to me. It came, and then I brought in my Grove Mother Spring Dryad deck with this master deck, and I used it in the first storyline tournament. The combo is terribly difficult to pull off. You need three pieces on the board. One of them has to be level 3. But I went to the storyline and I played this deck. And in fact, my buddy Alan told me, don't focus on the combo. Just play it aggressive and use your other Forgeborn. So I used Korok as the Forgeborn, decided that 15 minutes before the event started. I ended up winning the very first storyline tournament. And during, I think it was the 4th round, I got the combo off, when in my testing, I hadn't gotten the combo off successfully. And I did it when it was on camera. And I think I still have the footage somewhere. I never released it. That was definitely an aha, I understand the edge cases of this game. And I later came to learn developers did not know that interaction was in the game. And it was just a really cool, that was just a super cool experience to have.
Absolutely. Yeah, that journey of discovery, wanting to pull something off, managing to pull it off, not pulling it off every game, still winning the storyline tournament. These are awesome moments in your origin story with SolForge Fusion. I'd love to get into Collection Manager now. And this is going to kind of be a two-parter episode because this week I'm talking to you. Next week I'm talking to Namrog. And this was, I'll thank Scuba Toad because he inspired this during our chat last week. He said, I want to know more about the Collection Manager. Do that episode next. So we're making it happen here. How did the Collection Manager come into being? What brought it into this universe?
The game had its fangs that suck into me, and I loved it. And I started realizing that, okay, I have a bunch of decks coming with the Kickstarter. I want more decks. And I'm thinking the amount of difficulty it is to organize and sort through these, because they are sets of 10 cards, each card having its power distributed across 3 different variations. That is a lot to, I like, even when I think about it, I get overwhelmed. Like, I'm like, that's so much to think about. And so I was at the time working as a teacher, which is a seasonal thing. So during the summer, I knew, hey, Gen Con's coming up, Kickstarter's fulfilling. I want to make something that can do this. And I knew my way around Excel a little bit just from in school, whatever projects I've been working on. It was a big task that was way beyond my skill level. Luckily, there is ML Vanby from the Discord. Michael, he's a super, super smart guy who because we had this shared hobby, when I didn't know what to do as a data analyst and understanding formatting data and reading text or whatnot, he was just a wealth of knowledge. And that really helped me get something going. And so, I was like, if I could just take every aspect of what can be valued in a card. It's stats. I don't even touch its stats. I don't know if you've noticed there's no attack or health in the Collection Manager, because that alone is such a complicated thing. I'm like,
I can see it on your face now. Just trying to fathom it is like too much. Let's not go there. I'll focus on something else.
Right. So categories. And so first off, what's the subtype of the creature? Does it have a payoff? So there's how many of these subtypes of creatures do you have and what cards interact with that subtype? That's where things kind of started. And then I looked at what are all the things that matter? Some cards can increase attack. Some cards like increased attack. Some cards can interact with spells. Some cards, Thunder Crash Field. Now you have a trigger based on something upping its attack. So just looking at what are all the fundamental core interactions of the game, categorizing that, and then based on the card text, splitting it into those categories, which is really difficult with Google Sheets. But I am not a professional coder. Everything I'm like just amateur, just learning what I can, dipping my toes into coding because it can do cool stuff, and I have ambitious ideas.
I don't think it's an uncommon concept that crosses a SolForge Fusion player's mind after you start to get your first 4 decks, and then beyond that you just go, I don't have enough time. I don't have the brain capacity to just keep looking at these and come to conclusions. What was the moment where you did reach out? How did you realize that you didn't have enough sort of computing power, programming experience to do this yourself? And then how did you connect with ML Vanby and Namrog and the others?
ML Vanby I had met through the Stoneblade Discord. He had been making spreadsheets of data. He was able to take like all the different cards, the base cards, the modifiers, and throw them up in sheets. So that's how I knew of him. He had been making some community resources. And as I threw myself against this, every time I had a problem, I'd throw myself against the wall. If I couldn't do it, if I couldn't figure it out with Google, then I would just send a message to ML Bambi. So eventually I got something that worked. And Namrog reached out to me and he said, "Hey, I really like what you're doing, and I'm willing to put in my time to help, but your code is such like a jumbled mess of garbage that if we're doing this moving forward, we have to use like a code base I made." And I said, yeah, good. I'm all for that. And he had like already like recreated everything I did, but did it well. And so, yeah, out of his desire for the tool to work, he was like, yeah, let me step in. And he's been amazing to bring it to actually be functional.
It's a really cool story too, because like you have an idea, you are able on the Stoneblade Discord to find like-minded people who also want that idea to succeed. And all of you are willing to put in time and effort. You're not getting paid, any of you, for this. There's no financial return for it. It's all for the love of the game and wanting the game to be fun and enjoyable and accessible for people. And yeah, I got to thank you, man, on behalf of everybody. Like, it's made a huge difference to me and my own ability to create interesting fuses, find interesting fuses. I probably spend, a good 30 minutes on it a day just going, what could I build next? What could I build next? And it's definitely foundational for OzForge and what we're doing in Australia to sort of play in limited and sealed formats, to have your tool to generate interesting combinations. We've done a reversal recently where everybody generated decks for their opponent in round one, and you had to create the worst possible fuse for your opponent. And we played a tournament like that. It was so much fun, and none of that would be possible without the collection manager. So yeah, I just really wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you for what you and the guys did and continue to do. Like, it's not done. I'm sure it's a work in progress.
Well, I was thinking of, actually, there's something I said I would do and then I haven't touched it. And hopefully Namrog doesn't end up doing it anyway. I'll try to get on that so it doesn't get burdened on him again. But it's also been super cool to see how the community has taken it and done stuff with it. Scuba Toad started with the Great Viking game sales using the collection manager as a base, and then using that and then has taken that to he wrote his own code for, I'm sure, plenty of detail in his episode on the Puffin Man had gone and took it upon himself to make a community collection of voluntary collecting people's usernames so they could just build, here's what's out here. Here are all the decks that we know about. And then to be able to get to meet these people, which I met the Puffin Man. We had talked and played so many games together, and we actually met at Fuse Fest, and that's been super cool. I'm so glad that people have found use of it, and it's helped them enjoy the game, but it's also super cool to just see what other people do with it.
I'm interested because I seem to be a rarity among gamers, and I call myself a monogamous gamer, in that like I fall in love with a game and that's the only game in the world for me. And I seem to be in a small category there. So I'm always interested to ask this question in part one. Are you a monogamous gamer as well? Or are there other games which are currently in your brain swimming around? And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to just love SolForge. You can love other things. But I'm just curious because that's just the way my brain works.
Typically, so if I'm playing card games, there's only one card game ever at a time. I can't manage multiple card games. There was a time when SolForge took me away from Legends of Runeterra, and I used to be Hearthstone. So it's like a lot of the time I'll have a digital card game that I'm interested in, and now SolForge has brought that back to the physical card game. But I have been playing a lot of auto battlers are a lot of fun. I think it's called backpack battles. I'm a fan of deck building roguelikes, lots of card games. Slay the Spire is fantastic. Monster Train. I like systems. I like analyzing systems. And I have ambitions to design systems in the future.
Awesome. Well, it was quite cool hearing you talk about Dominion being one of those early ones that stuck with you. And then I've listened to so many Justin Gary podcasts where he talks about how he loved Dominion, but he wanted to make it better. And that led to Ascension. So it's kind of nice to see these, you and Richard Garfield, mathematicians in your shared history. Justin Gary liked Dominion. You liked Dominion. He went off on his, there's these orbits that you guys are sharing. I think it's a really good time to move on to part 2, which in the true Soulbind sense is all about transformations. I'm interested in milestones in your journey, like moments where the card flipped, where your relationship with SolForge Fusion in one way, shape, or another, positive or negative, changed. So where I'd like to go with this in the start is that moment that you found out you were going to become a Forge Guardian, and you were invited to become a Forge Guardian, because I feel like that has to be one of your biggest flips in this game.
You know what? I'm trying to remember. Do I even remember the moment? I don't. I truly don't. It was I was
really always
cool.
A Forge Guardian. I was born a Forge Guardian or something like that, right?
Yeah. It's like I did all the heavy lifting for the collection manager, all that stuff before Forge Guardians were a thing. I'm trying to remember who even talked to me about it, whether it was Lucas who first reached out or Alex, who was head of organized play at the time. I can't even remember the moment. It just kind of eventually it went from unofficial to official.
I kind of like that. That shows that this has been such a journey for you in your mind, that it's not broken up linearly in terms, because some people's minds might do that. They might catalog, this happened first. It was a sunny day in July, and then I got the call. And to you, this is just kind of like all part of one experience. That's kind of cool. I'm not going to pressure you to remember specifics, because I like that, it's just part of your being, That's cool. Maybe I could send it in a different direction. What was it like being at the first Fuse Fest? Because that seems like a cool moment.
So the first Fuse Fest was the first time that I did any cosplay. I had participated in that first storyline, and I won as Korok, and there was a story attached to that deck that was written for it, and the lore of what happened during that event was so cool. And here now is the next storyline that I get to participate, because I didn't get to go to PAX Unplugged. I was just like, oh, this is so cool. I can be, this is the perfect opportunity. I'm going to a convention. Let's cosplay, because I like to nerd out. I've had ambitions of doing cosplay because I played video games for forever, and there's always cool weapons. I remember, and can't remember how many times in middle school I doodled the Maple Story MMO I used to play, and I would sketch out the maple sword, which was like this anniversary item that was so simple, but it was like a sword with a maple leaf built into it in the hilt. And so it was a design that I drew over and over again. I always dreamed of dressing up as one of these cool characters. And I was so interested in a game. I was like, I'm literally part of the lore. So let's embody that character. And I had a roommate who has a vinyl cutter that she could make designs, and it cuts vinyl. And so she did that so I can have all the tattoos of Korok. And I got a bunch of cardboard and hot glue and duct tape and made a big metal gauntlet. I just wanted to, let's do arts and crafts and feel inspired. So walking in, that was so cool.
Was it scary? Was it scary at all? Or were you like, these are my people, they're all into this, and I'm all in on this?
I think because it wasn't my first event, because I had already been to Gen Con, and even at Gen Con, people had come up to me and said, oh, hey, you're more than most. I go, because I had done some streaming events leading up to, and hosting events leading up to Gen Con. So some people came up to me and like, oh, hey, you're that guy. And so it already felt so welcoming that when I was going on, this isn't a big convention. These are just my people.
My people, yeah.
Yeah. My people, and the ones that I didn't get to meet, some of them I was going to have a chance to meet there. So it was very exciting. Then I got to meet Shadow, or I think I had already met him, but Shadow was there, and he was dressed up in a cloak, and I think that's why I got inspired. Wait, no, did the cloak inspire me to dress up, or me dressing up did that inspire the cloak? I forget.
It's great. I feel like this is a Christopher Nolan film where we're seeing different bits, beginning and end, and it is like I think memory is like that for some people. I don't think everybody can remember things in a linear fashion, and I love that about this episode, that things are happening and we'll put together the story later of the timeline, but these are just memories of yours, and that's great. That's exactly what I want to explore. I loved seeing all the videos of Fuse Fest and seeing you dressed up and seeing Shadow in his cloak, not a cape. I understand that's not what we're calling it. And what was it like being, obviously you've been to some of the biggest SolForge events that have ever happened. Were there any other notable like feelings that came out of being in these huge spaces with all these people, especially with the Fuse Fest that has like shouting happening across the room and triggers happening that everybody's getting into? What was that all like?
Being physically at a table with someone playing a competitive game is a very different experience than sitting at your computer on a Discord call with them. And I had a taste of that at Gen Con, and it was quite overwhelming to me. And I do remember that there was a period when I was at the first Fuse Fest where like I was having so much fun, but at a certain point, I remember becoming very overwhelmed. And I had made like a PVC rig to set up so I could record with a webcam my footage. And there was another person recording their footage who had come in from Keyforge, Justice Blinded. And I remember feeling like, and I had recorded stuff at Gen Con and that never got out. So I was kind of going in feeling like I had already been failing and I had to catch up. And then here's this guy who had brought his equipment. He's so much more knowledgeable about this. And it feels like here's someone coming in and they're going to do what I'm trying to do and do it better, feeling insecure. And just because, it's a lot of stimulus and sometimes the stress manifests in different ways. And it did lead to this feeling kind of imposter syndrome, because I'm with my people. I was moments ago so incredibly excited, and then I suddenly am overwhelmed.
So like everything was going great and you were in your zone and you were having a really good time. And I think it's great that you're willing to be vulnerable about this. I think we should talk more about these kind of moments in life, because I've certainly had them too, where you're feeling a bit overwhelmed and you're seeing somebody who's doing streaming and they're got different knowledge level to you and all that. So where did it go to from there? Like, how did you manage to get yourself back on track?
I called my mom. I remember sitting. There's like this long hallway that you had to get to the room where we were playing. And I walked out of these hallways and there's just a spot with like 2 chairs and a little table. And I'm sitting there and I see some people walking by and I'm sitting in this cosplay and I'm on the phone with my mom and I'm just like, I know I'm overwhelmed. I'm just gonna but I have the rest of the day to get through. And I remember sitting there. It's like I had wiped away tears and just thinking like, I don't know what they're seeing, but that's okay. I'm in this conversation with my mom. And when I'm done with this conversation with my mom, I'm going to be back in that reality. And, and I have a great relationship. I'm a big fan of Justice Blinded. We have good community. I just messaged him the other day. I've felt similar stories with other people in the community where when it first comes in, I have this line of insecurity and I can consciously know, no, they're just like, this is a game. This is a community. You can't be the only one to have these moments. This isn't that's not reasonable. And luckily I've learned to sit with that and not act out in those moments, to be able to forge good relationships with those people, because they're just other people who are excited to engage in a game that I love, that they love too.
We're all on our own like journey, right? To discover ourselves, figure things out about ourselves. I didn't know until I was, just a few years ago that I have sort of an anxiety about being in loud spaces. Which comes at conflict for me being a gamer that likes to go to big conventions, big tournaments and things like that. And little discoveries I've made along the way, like, oh, God bless you, noise canceling headphones, to just be able to put those in, mute out the world for a minute and let me restore my own inner peace. But I think it's important to talk about these things. And thank you for being vulnerable and open to chat about it as well. I think it's all part of that mosaic of life, isn't it? Discovering our highs and our lows.
Yeah.
How do you feel today? So we've talked a lot about your past and your journey, but how does it feel today when you're sitting down to play SolForge and whether you're playing physical and you've shuffled up your deck or the digital app's done that for you, but you draw those first few cards? What is the feeling and the vibe when you just are starting to play a game that either excites you about the game or you find really interesting?
Okay. I'm gonna give you an answer a little bit. I'm coming from this vulnerable place, so I'm gonna come into it, and I'm gonna stay in that lane of being a little more honest. It's been complicated. It's been nuanced emotions when I play. We talked a little bit before the podcast, so I don't want to get too deep into kind of Web3 and that stuff. But it was such a jarring announcement that I wasn't expecting, that has been a lot to absorb, especially for something that's like I've invested lots of time into it, let alone, I mean, money too. I have a large collection. I like the game. I collect in the game.
And emotion too, right? Like, I think that's what the vibe I'm getting after this interview as well. Like, you are emotionally invested, in love with this game. You want it to do well. You care about it.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say I'm easily be described as a sensitive guy. To be honest, I haven't played a lot recently, so I've been partially appreciating a little bit of a pause on engaging with SolForge, but it's not like it's out of my life. I mean, I had so much fun at Fuse Fest, and I have been playing in Nathus's invitational event, which unfortunately I didn't make top cut. But also, I guess if I'm still being in the honest place, one of the games I played, so it was like the day I had gotten back from Fuse Fest or the day after, I was playing SolForge, and it was the first time I'm playing digitally. I'm on the app, so now it's like I'm Web3 charged because I'm on the app. I'm playing competitively as opposed to playing for fun, and because I'm trying to be a content creator, and if I'm going to play these events, and I know that like a skill set I have is to talk my thoughts out, and I like to verbalize it. So why not kill two birds with one stone? Let's make a video. That puts an extra layer of pressure on things. I had to stop doing the recording because I'm playing with my buddy, and I'm just suddenly overwhelmed with emotion. I had a couple people who were watching reached out to me because they were concerned. We played the game, and I had become overwhelmed, and I just had a bunch of traveling, and we don't really have a lot of answers yet. I'm sitting in an unknown, so it's like I know I'm having a more intense reaction, and I understand the circumstances as to why. But when I played, I just like broke down crying, and it was a friend that I had made in the community who was like, "Hey, game is secondary to this. Like, hey, well, what's going on?" And then I had a couple people reach out to me, and I talked with some other people, and it's been sad to see some of the community members leave.
Yes,
that's been tough. A lot happened very quickly. And so I love the game, and I know it's like I'm sticking out. I'm going to wait to see how all of this goes. I don't think it's so evil. It's just confusing and new, and I recognize I'm coming at it from a place of fear. But I still love the game. I was excited
I can tell you love the game. That comes across very clear. Don't you worry about that. And I think that's where these kind of relationships are born, and exactly the sort of thing I want to explore with this podcast is the relationship people have with the game. And it's so clear to me, Eli, so very clear that you love this game. You want it to succeed. You've invested so much time and energy into it. But that can be a double-edged sword sometimes, right? Especially when big changes are introduced. So I totally get where you're coming from, man. Are you interested in diving more into this, or do you want to have a little pause? We can go to another part.
I'm happy wherever direction you want to take it. We can go.
This is an interesting direction to me, but I also don't want to risk triggering you too much because I can tell these are hard areas that we've sort of wandered into. So I want to leave the ball in your court, like for your mental health, to decide whether we continue to hover in this area or you want to go somewhere else. And then if we come back here again, that's cool too. Like, I like the idea that you're on this journey too with me, and I'm not pushing you into places that you don't want to.
I'm pretty comfortable going to that vulnerable place. Like I said at the start, I didn't want to get into Web3, but the podcast was going so well that I felt, like got to that place of vulnerability. And like, I think I said it out loud of like, oh, I'm noticing this. Let's go this direction.
Yeah.
I've like partly been training myself to be more vulnerable. A lot of like the improv training I've been doing, and the stuff I've been doing with that is, hey, be comfortable being in there, and live honestly. and express yourself honestly. So
I believe in all that as well. So are there other areas of the game that you've ever felt challenged? Like, because I've only been in the game for like 4 months, right? So I've heard of other moments that happened that were sort of challenging. Maybe the Ultimate Championships were challenging for people with the way they sort of played out. I don't know if you attended those events or not, but are there other moments where the game kind of was at a fulcrum point and then they recovered, or they didn't, or they made a change?
Yeah. So this first thing that comes to mind is there was this Season 0 tournament series, which the idea was local stores would buy a Season 0 kit. It would come with a bunch of promos and some stuff to give out as prizes. The top prize was a seat at this League of Champions, I think it ended up being called. There was a representative of every store, and they would all play together to see who would be on top. No, wait, I'm conflating this with Season 1 and Season 0. At first, there was Season 0, and it was just like the store thing. But the Season 0 stuff never came. They didn't deliver on it. And that really hurt local stores. There was a place about 45 minutes north of me that I had been driving to play. And when there was these issues with this Season 0 stuff, that the promos weren't being released, that store owner had lost a lot of momentum. After a while, he had just asked, like, hey, should I just sell all this stuff to you at cost? Because I'm dissatisfied with this game. I'm dipping out. And that was a real sad moment, which never really got resolved.
Yeah.
It was just chalked up as a mistake of, I know distribution had its issues. I don't know all the details on what went on, but I know there was a lot of stuff going on. First, it was you're kickstarting a game post-pandemic. It's like, or partially during pandemic. I don't remember where things started.
You got a challenge, to do that. Yeah, and was an uphill, like a scary time for a lot of games that wanted to live in the bricks and mortar stores. How were they going to recover during that phase? So is playing in a store still, or in real life still, your favorite way to play the game?
It's my favorite way to play the game, but the reason it's my favorite way to play the game is because it only happens at these big events that I travel to. I don't have a local scene going. I wasn't part of like a card game culture and trying to infiltrate that community saying, hey, here's a game I want to play is like a difficult thing to do. Those communities heavily meet during the weekends, and I have other hobby obligations on the weekends. So I faced a lot of trouble trying to get a local scene started.
And that can be hard too, because I face that dilemma too. Like, we're trying to grow this scene here in Australia, went through this phase of like having like 2 people in the whole country that were into the game, and then they disappeared, and one of them's back now. And we're trying to kind of build from zero. Like, the game is around, you can find it, you can buy it, but trying to build those people who want to come to the store every couple of weeks to play in our events. And, it's hard. It's really hard, especially like at the moment for us. We're trying to convince people to play it as opposed to Star Wars Unlimited, which is the new hotness, or Altered, or all these things that are on the way. And for me, my challenge with it is like, I don't want to feel like a salesman. Like, I'm not trying to sell you product. I'm trying to bring you into this really cool community and this thing that really brings me a lot of joy. But that's hard, I think, in your own mind too, to kind of reconcile, like, I'm not a salesman, but I do want you to buy this thing so that we can have fun together. We can have an experience. Like, I think that you'll really enjoy it. I totally get you, man. It's a delicate juggle, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I do definitely when I play, it takes me a couple games to remember, oh yeah, you got to manually upgrade all this stuff. But I love the feeling of cards between your hands. And now that I have plenty of hours into the game, couple games in, I'm in the rhythm. And it's surprisingly, like, when you look at the game, a lot of people might think, oh, that seems very clunky to have to upgrade these cards. And it's definitely a different system. I have found pretty good methods of, if, at the end of the cycle, you're counting it and you don't have it, like, that process has become very easy, finding whatever was missing, and it happens less and less.
The other interesting observation I've made, and I'm curious if you're the same, is I seem to really care about playing my best when I'm in person. It's just something about holding the cards, thinking about all my options, seeing it laid out in front of me, the physicality of it. So I find I often perform better when I'm playing in real life, and I've got it. And I don't know why, because in my head, it's all the same. But that's one of the interesting things about playing a hybrid game too, right? Especially you have that background with physical games, with digital games, and now you're in one that can kind of occupy both lanes. Do you find there's any other differences in the way you play when you're playing in one mode or another?
Yeah, I'm very much an auditory processor. I talk myself through stuff, which is nice digitally. I can even be in a Discord call and use push to talk and talk to you when I want to, and otherwise just talk out my thoughts. So in-person play is harder for me to find the lines because I just have a lot of thoughts in my head, and it's difficult for me to structure and hold too many all at once. And I'm bad at taking notes. I went through college and I didn't take notes. I was diagnosed with ADHD. I had a note taker, someone in my class was paid to take notes. I still never looked at the notes. Then I kept getting it because I was like, I might as well have someone in my class get paid. I struggle physically, but not so much that I feel like I'm a bad player when I play physically.
Let's go on to the lightning round. I call it relationship test, and we'll work through some immediate reactions to a few things, which should be fun. I haven't prepared you for any of these, so we're on a journey. Here we go. What is your favorite card in the game? Any of the sets that have been released so far. Could be based on art, could be based on how it makes you feel when you play it. What's your favorite card?
Because I smiled when this card came through, I'm going to give this as my answer. Glorfglob.
Yes.
Set 2 card that eats something and gives it eats based on their health, it scales up. That one's a lot of fun.
And most hated card. So this could be, I hate playing against it. I hate it when it's in a deck that's otherwise really good.
I don't know if I'm going to continue to have this hate for it, but it feels fresh. The Darkshaper Savant, the new Necreum version of a Flame Shaper Savant, but it's every time you play level 1, it gives minus something to a creature. Very strong, especially with some really cool Aloyan tools.
What is your favorite modifier? Any of the sets? One of those prefixes that goes on the front of a card.
Part of me is going Hematophagic, not because it's a good modifier, but because it is part of a combo that I discovered.
That's perfect, because last episode, that was Scuba Toad's most hated. So that's like a perfect symmetry. One episode, person's most hated. Next episode, people's favorite. What is your most hated modifier then? Something that you hate to see on the front of a creature, or maybe you remember it because it was the worst possible roll for a creature.
Vile.
What does Vile do again?
Vile is set 2's version of
Corrupt. It's destroy a creature.
Yeah, so it just says destroy one of your creatures, not another one of your creatures. So if you have nothing on the board, you play it, it just kills itself.
Favorite artwork? As an artsy kind of person in the art space, there must be something that just you could have a framed picture of it on your wall kind of thing.
Well, there's just one that I've thought about a lot. Stitcher has a very fond place in my heart, and I have drawn it multiple times in paint when I'm just trying to make a diagram of a combo. I've thought about how do I take Stitcher, and I wanted to make minions of all the factions where the magic that's she's weaving is weaving into either into a zombie or in particular a spell sprite was what I had been thinking of. So I have the image of Stitcher a lot in my mind, and I just love that weaving of the magic.
And the other thing is, I'm glad I'm not the only one that has to draw my Stitcher combos out on paper. I've literally got a scribble pad next to my bedside where I'm trying to go, okay, but if I replace this, and then, because mine's a cutthroat Stitcher, so trying to run the math on all that just blew my brain up in a wonderful way.
It's got some numbers on it, but there's a whiteboard behind me that has gotten a lot of combos.
Favorite half deck in your collection right now, which you probably have a big collection at this point, I would imagine.
Oh, that's such a hard question.
Yeah. Hard-hitting journalism, that's what we're doing here.
I love Apocalypser, and I have a deck that has Apocalypser and a bunch of scientists and a bunch of gizmos. Oh wow, that's such a hard question.
I love all my children. Don't
okay,
make
I'll
me
give
pick.
it to the one that has Tempest. Half of the one that I used at the very first Gen Con is the one that has a story attached to it. So I'll go ahead and I'll say that one.
Yeah, fair. Favorite betrayer from your collection?
It's hard not to say Summoning Stitcher.
Physical play, Steam client, or tabletop simulator? If you only had to pick one, and that was the only one you could do from now to the end of the time, which one would you pick?
I would still pick physical. I like sitting down with someone and playing a card game, and this is a great game to just keep jamming. I couldn't imagine anybody saying TTS forever.
I think there's people out there. I think you'll be surprised. As I continue to do this series, I'll tag you in when somebody says that.
Perfect.
Favorite mechanic at play, game mechanic at play in SolForge, like the thing maybe that you're most into about it?
The batching system. I don't know if it counts, but the batching system as a whole. It's different than Magic. It's different than other games. I like the control of it. Yeah, and it gives me lots of puzzles to think about.
And I don't know if there is one for you. Maybe your love is so whole, there's nothing that fits this criteria, but is there anything in the game, like a mechanic or something, that is a struggle for you sometimes?
Oh, yeah. I've got one, and they've learned from their mistakes. So Lyria is the card that, for me, this idea of play from your discard pile. If it's level 1 gated things, if you draw it on your first hand, you're screwed. There's nothing you can do. Then in set 3, there's Caller of Souls that kind of fixes that gives you the option of upgrading something in your hand or in your discard, or letting you first discard something from your hand to put something into the discard. They understand the issue and they know how to work around it.
Well, let's go into part 4. I think this is a good transition point. So this one is called Your Future Together. This is like any good relationship when you sit down on the couch together and you go, where do you see this relationship going? Where are we going to be in 2 to 5 years from now, or even in the future? What are you thinking, Eli? What comes to mind?
That's a big, let's say, how would I phrase this? I'm waiting to see how my partner respects me and communicates with me. I'm going to withhold judgment for now, but our future is murky. I would love to be playing with her for years to come. Till I want to die. I want this game to outlive me. I want to pass my decks on to my grandchildren. I would love that. But sometimes you may change in a way, and a game may change in a way that it's just not right anymore. I don't think it's there. I don't know if it's there. And we'll see.
There have been so many times where my relationship with a game ended before I was ready because something happened. Team Covenant does a great How to Ruin a Game series of podcasts, which I recommend anybody has a listen to because they delve into that really deep. Physical distribution can be a problem. Cards can break a game. You cannot errata or ban quick enough. There's so many ways that games can go away, but people like you and me, we invest so much into this relationship with the game we're playing. We want it to do well. And it's nice to hear you're open and honest about where you're at the moment and your concerns and fears for the future. But nice to hear that you want it. You want this to continue. Let's see where it goes from here. Are there any people that you would like to shout out that have been influential in you, or people in the community who've really helped you feel welcome, helped you feel a part of this community?
Yeah. My buddy Alan has this gaming group called Team He Show, and he's the reason I met him on Discord. He was just like, hey, I want to practice for Gen Con. Does someone want to meet up every week? And I responded, I didn't even know what Gen Con was. And he's the reason that I came, and he really kind of helped pull me in to take a deeper plunge into the game. So yeah, Alan's fantastic. I've already mentioned multiple people. I do want to give a shout out to 2 great community members that I am saddened to not have in the community anymore, but Weekend and Cardboard Newt. Just wonderful, amazing people. Nate Weekend, I've played countless games with him, just staying up like grinding out before a big event, or just it's just a Friday night, so we're just playing for hours.
But those are special kind of relationships. I feel like those are the kind of relationships that a lot of us had maybe when we were teens, when we didn't have a lot of responsibility and we were just hanging with your buddy and there wasn't any concerns or anything like else going on, any of the adult stuff going on in your life yet. And it's awesome, I think, gaming in general, but especially having these kind of relationships with the community members where you can kind of not let that go just because you're an adult. You can still maintain that kind of positive, affirmative relationship is really cool. Was there anyone else? I feel like I cut you off there. Is anyone else? I know it's a huge list.
I'm going to shout out Grandfather. He hasn't been in the community lately. He is just an incredible man with many, many different avenues in his life. But he designed the logo, my MooreThanMoost logo for my YouTube channel. I got to give a shout out to my Digi guy, Nathis. I recorded this theme song parody of the Digimon theme song for our Digitize event, where our team name was
Digi
Digi
Guys.
Guys.
Podcasts. That was great.
And yeah, shout out to Lucas and Andrew, Fletch, Shadow, Lyria. I'm trying to think of everyone from Stoneblade who's just been amazing. Church. I'm sorry if I missed you, but there's so many amazing people in this community. Thank you all for making it so awesome.
It's an awesome community. I feel so welcomed, having just come in such a short space of time, and totally with you. It's an amazing thing to be a part of. We're getting near the end. So what I like to do at the end of each of my episodes is a little Easter egg is I get my guest to come up with a secret word or a secret phrase. And if you're listening to this point of the podcast and you're interested in going into the draw to win a digital deck, I just get my guest to say the secret phrase. All you have to do as a listener is just DM that to me, Iron Bryce, on Discord, and I'll put you in the draw for a deck each month. So I haven't given you a heap of time to think about it, but what's the first thing that comes to mind is the secret code of this episode?
Combinatorics.
Combinatorics, perfect. There'll be quite a few people Googling that to see how to spell it, I think, but that's great. That's very you. I get where you're coming from with that. Anything that you'd like to speak about the collection manager, things that are coming up or plans for the future for that? Or maybe we can leave, my next episodes are probably going to be, definitely Namrog, hopefully ML Vambi as well. So maybe they could talk to that if you'd like, or is there something that you'd really like to see it used for or changed in the future?
So many things I'd like to see it change in the future. I have ambitions to take it off Google Sheets and have a more robust system. I keep saying I'm going to do this. I'm like partway through a data science certificate program, so I'm trying to learn a little bit more. There's a class in the programming language R that I really want to get into. I think it could help a lot. So total ambition, and if my skill level wasn't a factor and I could actually be competent enough to do it, I would love to have a website that hosted this, I can go a bit deeper stat wise. I feel like there's a visual representation of stats that might be a better way to show how good stats in a deck are. I don't know what that looks like yet. I want to get better with computer generated graphics for data analysis, as well as just a custom deck builder for TTS would be cool. If it was implemented into the app, that would be amazing, but I doubt that they want to do that.
Have you had a chance to check out Scuba Toad's project? What are your thoughts on SolForgeFusionDecks.com? Because we did that in the last episode.
Yeah, it's very cool. I would like to dive into it to see how it analyzes things. A big thing for me where I set up Google Sheets of if you know what you're doing and you want to, you can create your own system for scoring the cards. The layouts there, I did a bunch of work. You could take that and modify it to your own thing. I was nervous on people are gonna have different opinions on how I should quantify it. So I've personally stayed out of making any sort of a scoring system because it's a daunting task and I'm scared of people on the internet.
We all
even
are.
though this community is a wonderful community. And I'm not on social media because I get anxious about random people on the internet. But I think it's so cool to take on such a big challenge like that. There's a lot of work that goes into that. I wish I could explore it like more to look at individual cards, just because my collection is so big, individual decks. I know I can do it one at a time, but I haven't taken the chunk of time to do that yet. It's also interesting to see the types of scores that there are. I've heard from like Justice Blinded of what his version of this was looking at, of like giving different scores for each like base kind of mechanic of the game and giving you scores for fusing particular decks together. But there's a lot that you can do, and I'm sure in the reality where I'm giving my collection to my kids when I pass, and it's going to go on from generation to generation, I'm sure we'll have lots of different opinions on and lots of different formulas and functions. I am hesitant in it's one person's opinion. And like I saw someone message on the Discord, oh, is there an established way that we can evaluate decks? Because people want a simple solution. And if this is the only thing that's out there, a lot of people's opinions are going to be shaped very strongly. And Scuba Toes knows the game well. I think he can do a perfectly good job quantifying it. But as a person and just data, my feelings on data in general, like, it's important to understand the data that you're looking at.
Yeah. And
if you're just looking at a score, you're losing a lot of that data. I don't know what the future looks like there, but those are the kinds of thoughts that have led me not going down that path.
For me personally, as a player and a person who's trying to evaluate my own collection, I love that we have different tools, that I'm not just basing everything off one tool. And I will use your collection manager to look at some stuff. I'll put a link in the show notes, and I can't remember who created it, but there's that website that kind of looks at the average of health, like stats, just card stats across the different levels. Mm-hmm. I'll use that as well. And then I'll go in on SolForge Fusion decks.com, and I'll also see what that has to say. And I get all these little bits of information, and they're all interesting, like in a mosaic together of trying to get information. And so I'm a believer like you. I don't want it to be that there's only one system, because I found that with Keyforge when I was playing that game, that everyone was just bowing before the altar of SAS, and you would succeed if you had a deck that had a high SAS rating, and the assumption would be that you would fail if you played a deck with a low SAS rating. And I felt like the game wasn't as colorful or interesting, as vibrant once everyone's belief in that one system to evaluate sort of took hold. So I love where we're at with different tools, and I think that should be encouraged in this community. Absolutely. That's about it for the episode, unless there's anything else you wanted to plug, any events coming up that you're hosting as a Guardian.
I don't have any SolForge events that I'm hosting as a Guardian. If you are around San Francisco and the weekend of June 15th, there's Open Sauce, is like an engineering convention that I had this kinetic sculpture idea I've always wanted to do, and applied to be an exhibitor. I got in, and I still have to finish that project, but it's the motivation, at the last, I don't do things till the last minute. So it's been that motivator to do it. I think
that part in your story is clear. We got that.
Yeah. If you're up in San Francisco and you want to look at a lot of cool science stuff, I think they have like 500 or so YouTube engineer people exhibiting.
That sounds awesome. Well, send me a link. We'll put it in the show notes for sure to the event and to get all the details.
I guess if I also have this platform to pitch, if you happen to be in San Diego and you want to watch improv, I'll also plug Finest City Improv is my theater. Come by and check out shows.
If I was in the States, I'd definitely come and see you. So anybody who's there, you have no excuse. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been a really cool episode, Eli, very different to the other ones I've had. And I'm all about that. Like, I don't want my content to seem formulaic. And I really liked your vulnerability, your willingness to go into sort of your own personal history and some of the challenging moments you've had. That is absolutely awesome and to be encouraged. And I thank you so much for that. There's lots of other good podcasts that I can recommend if you liked this one. Charge Plated podcast that Church does was really great for me when I was starting to learn the game. Fifth Cycle has this awesome team camaraderie. I've listened to you on both those podcasts as well, Eli, so would highly recommend that if you want to hear more from Eli. And OzForge is the Discord channel that I run and the community I run, trying to grow the community in Australia around the world. We host events every Monday night and every Friday night Australia time. So you can find those using the SolForge Fusion event finder, or you can join OzForge in the Discord show notes. So thank you again for your time, for your energy, for the vibes you've been putting out, and for your vulnerability. I really appreciate it. It was so nice to talk to you. And in the coming weeks, we're going to be hearing from Namrog and hopefully ML Vanby as well, to hear more about their involvement in the collection manager. So thanks again, Eli. It was great to meet you. I look forward to chatting to you in the future.
Thank you so much, Bryce. This has been a pleasure.